This resolution recognizes the 20th anniversary of the suppression of Chinese protesters and citizens in Tiananmen Square. Freedom of expression and freedom of assembly are fundamental human rights that belong to all people and are recognized as such under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. In the last 20 years since Tiananmen Square, the significance of the U.S.-China relationship has grown dramatically on a variety of foreign policy issues and on our economic relationships. In pursuing these relations successfully, a key challenge has been to find the right combination of pursuit of basic American values. That was a challenging consideration of trade relations with China in its accession to the WTO. There was incorporated in the legislation before Congress in 2000 the creation of the Congressional Executive Commission on China to pursue issues relating to human rights, including labor rights, and the rule of law. The Commission has actively engaged on these issues and issued a comprehensive report every year since its inception. When peaceful protesters gathered in Beijing's Tiananmen Square and in over 100 other Chinese cities, it represented a burst of freedom. They called for the elimination of corruption and the acceleration of economic and political reforms, especially freedom of expression and freedom of assembly. These protesters included not only students, but also government employees, journalists, workers, police, and members of China's armed forces. People peacefully filled the square until thousands of armed forces moved in, surrounding the demonstrators. On June 4, 1989, soldiers fired directly into the crowds outside of Tiananmen Square, killing and injuring unarmed civilians. The exact number of the dead and wounded remains unknown. The wounded are estimated to have numbered at least in the hundreds. Detentions at the time were in the thousands. Some political prisoners still languish in Chinese prisons. We today express our sympathy to the relatives and friends of those killed and injured on that day. And we stand with them as we honor the memory of those whose lives were lost and those who continue to suffer today. Let us be absolutely clear. This resolution asks nothing of China that is inconsistent with commitments to international standards to which China, in principle, has already agreed. We ask of China's leaders full and independent investigations into the Tiananmen Square crackdown with a full commitment to openness, and we call on Chinese authorities to release those individuals imprisoned solely for peacefully exercising their internationally recognized rights. We call on Chinese authorities to end the harassment and detention of those who were involved in the 1989 protests, and to end the harassment and detention of those who continue to advocate peacefully for political reform. I encourage my colleagues to support those in China who demand an accounting of the events of June 4, 1989, and to express support for those advocating for accountable and democratic governance in China. In closing, let me note, 2 decades ago, the Chinese people stood up at Tiananmen, but China's leaders ordered them to stand down. Many defied that order, choosing instead to remain faithful to their aspirations. The world took note, and we today preserve that memory for history. I yield back. I reserve the balance of my time, and as mentioned, I think the chairman of the committee will take over the remainder of the time, and I salute him, if I might, for his work and that of the ranking members on the committee and all of those who joined in supporting this resolution.